Its impact, center-state relationship is altered, center becomes all-powerful, executive, legislature, everything is in their control. Legislature of both state and center can be extended beyond its normal 5 years term. Fundamental rights are suspended. So Article 19 under 358 gets suspended. Any other fundamental right except 20 and 21 can be suspended separately by the President, okay, under Article 359. So this is with respect to emergency, national emergency. Is that okay, guys? So we'll start with the emergency provision, okay? So emergency provision, Article 352 to Article 360. It's important to remember couple of articles under this particular section. All right. So emergency provision is one of the features that is there in our constitution, which converts the entire federal structure of our country into a unitary form of government. So India is a federal system. Okay. So during emergency, the center becomes very powerful. Okay. So these emergency provisions are there in order to meet some contingent situation. Some untoward incidents has happened, some emergency situation is there, like war, like internal armed rebellion, okay, or a financial emergency. In such situation, the central government will become very powerful. So the federal distribution of powers between center and state can be altered by the center, and center can take away all the powers to itself in order to meet that emergency situation. Is that understood? So this has been derived from, this has been inspired from the Weimar Constitution of Germany, if you can recollect from the first class. So it has been inspired from the Weimar Constitution of Germany. Okay, so this provision, emergency. So let us see what we have to understand from this particular section. Types of emergency. So we have three types of emergency: national emergency, the state emergency, or what we call it as the president's rule. And the third one is called as financial emergency. So who declares this emergency? Okay, under what grounds? Why this emergency is declared? Under what grounds it is declared? Then what is the procedure once it is declared? Okay, then what happens? Who will approve it? Till what time it is going to be there, etc. So procedurally, how it is done. Okay, it's an exceptional case, so therefore we need to have a procedure. It cannot be simply declared every time. So there is a procedure for declaring an emergency. And then we have to see the impact on the center-state relationship, impact on the legislature, that is on the parliament and the state legislature, and the impact on us, the citizens. I would like to add one more point. As I told you, center becomes all powerful. Along with that, even the executive kind of becomes very powerful. The president becomes very powerful. In the sense, president means on the aid and advice of the prime minister and council of ministers. So let us see what are the different types and the procedures, etc. Is that understood? So the first one is your national emergency. So the national emergency is declared under Article 352. Article 352 gives the power to the President of India. It gives the power to the President of India declares national emergency when he receives a written recommendation from the cabinet. This is not there anywhere else in the constitution. Cabinet actually is not mentioned anywhere in the constitution except this place. Everywhere it is assumed that the president will act on the advice given by the prime minister and council of ministers. We have discussed that. So the prime minister and the council of ministers advises the president. Nowhere it is written, even there it should be written. But this is mentioned very clearly, written. The reason is that it was added later in the constitution. Initially, when national emergency was declared, it was misused. So therefore, in order to prevent its another misuse, this provision has been added. I'll discuss that later. For now, how it is there in the constitution presently, we will discuss. Initially, it was president will declare. It was assumed that he will declare it on the aid and advice of prime minister and council of ministers. Okay. So basically what happened was in 1975, Indira Gandhi declared a national emergency, or rather advised the president to declare national emergency, and it was criticized. And later, once Indira Gandhi's government was replaced by the Janta government, the constitution was amended. So basically what happened was she just simply called the president over the phone and told him to declare the emergency, even without consulting her cabinet colleagues. So therefore, to prevent that misuse in the future, okay, today the Prime Minister simply cannot advise the President to declare national emergency. Today, the President has to consult his cabinet. The cabinet has to take a decision and then has to give a written recommendation to the President. Is that understood? So that is one. Second, on what grounds, when can this national emergency be declared? The national emergency can be declared on two grounds: external grounds and internal grounds. So when India is facing an external threat, a war or external aggression, when India is facing a war or external aggression, when I say external aggression, see, war is between two states like India, Pakistan, India, China. That is a war. Okay. External aggression means it can be by a non-state actor also. Like, let's say terrorists are attacking from outside. So that's an external aggression. It can be by a non-state actor. Did you understand? Okay, like what happened at the time of partition when you had these raiders tribal raiders who were invading from in Kashmir. Similarly, Kargil, Pakistan says we never attacked. Okay, so it's an external aggression. So when India is facing a war or external aggression, the president, in order to deal with that situation, can declare a national emergency. Similarly, on internal grounds, armed internal rebellion, armed internal rebellion. So this was added later after the 1975 national emergency and the criticism. 44th constitutional amendment added this armed internal rebellion. Before that, before 44th constitutional amendment, I will discuss that again. But for now, before that, what was mentioned was simply internal disturbance. What is internal disturbance is not defined. Anything can be declared as an internal disturbance. You have 100 people protesting in front of Vidhan Saudha can be declared as internal disturbance. Is that okay? So any kind of political, opposition against the government can be misinterpreted as internal disturbance, and national emergency could have been declared. That's what happened in 1975. In 1975. There was popular movement against Indira Gandhi because she was accused of corruption in elections, and there was hyperinflation, joblessness. So people were fighting against the government, or rather people were protesting against the government, and they were demanding her resignation. In order to prevent it, or rather in order to avoid it, okay, she declared internal emergency on internal disturbance ground. Now, what is internal disturbance is not clear. So, whatever the president feels is internal disturbance becomes internal disturbance. So, it was not unconstitutional. But today, that name, internal disturbance, has been replaced with armed internal rebellion. So, it has to be a rebellion, meaning people fighting against the government, armed, meaning it should be violent with weapons. Okay, so that is the ground for declaring internal emergency. So simple, from the exam point of view, two things. What is that? External war or aggression, and internal armed rebellion. On these two grounds, national emergency can be declared. Who will declare it? President. On the written recommendation of the cabinet. Please remember this, not simply aid and advice of Prime Minister. It has to be a written recommendation from the cabinet. Otherwise, it becomes unconstitutional. So when the emergency is declared on external grounds, it's called as external emergency. When it is declared on internal grounds, it's called as internal emergency. So now let's see the impact. So impact of emergency can be studied under three headings. One is impact on center-state relationship, impact of the legislature on the legislature, that is impact on the Lok Sabha, and impact on the state legislative assembly, and impact on citizens, you and me, how is it going to impact? So the first one is center-state relationship. How does it impact? So center-state relationship we have discussed under three headings, that is executive, legislative, and financial relationship. Right? So what is the executive relationship? How does it change? The center is now empowered to give directions to the state on any matters, and these becomes binding on the state. Is that understood? So basically the state government comes completely under the control of the central government. Is that understood? The state government comes completely under the control of the central government. Next, with respect to legislature, if you remember, I told you under when the national emergency is there, okay, the bills, okay, state bills can be passed by the parliament. You remember? Yes, can be passed by the parliament. Under 5 grounds, parliament can make law on 5 grounds. Parliament can make law on state subjects. You remember? Okay. One of the ground was national emergency. So during national emergency, the parliament is empowered to make law on state subject. Yes, so that is the legislative relationship also gets altered. Under normal circumstance, center is allowed to make law only on central subject and concurrent subject. But during national emergency, it can make law even on state subject. And what is the validity of such law, I told you? No, it will remain in force for 6 months after the end of national emergency. That is ordinance. Now, national emergency may, when parliament makes a law, it will remain in force for 6 months after the end of the national emergency, after the revocation of national, when national emergency is withdrawn. Okay, after that 6 months, it will remain in force. Similarly, the president can also issue ordinance. President can also issue ordinance on state subject. And it has to be approved by the parliament. All that remains the same. But here it can issue, president can issue ordinance even on state subject. Next, financial relationship also gets altered. So the central government can make changes to the distribution between the center and state with respect to tax matter. All such changes will remain till the end of financial year. Till the end of the financial year. Whatever alteration is made between center-state financial relationship will remain in force till the end of the financial year. Even this I had mentioned earlier, but anyways. So let me repeat again, center-state relationship. So you have executive powers. So center takes complete control of the state governments. All right. A legislature, the parliament is empowered to make law even on state subject. The center-state financial distribution is altered, and all such alteration will remain in force till the end of the financial year, on which year the national emergency comes to an end. The financial year is from what? April to March. Let's say on December, the emergency comes to an end. That means December to March. So March, it will come to an end. After that, the regular financial distribution will be carried on. Next, coming to the legislature. Both Lok Sabha and Legislative Assembly of the state will remain. Okay, it is present. Okay, but its duration can be increased. its duration can be increased. So because during national emergency, elections cannot be held. Okay, so therefore, if at all the time period has ended, okay, so if it has already completed 5 years, then the the life of Lok Sabha, the life of state legislative assembly can be increased 1 year at a time. Okay, each time it is increased, it has to be approved by the parliament. Okay, it can be increased beyond 5 years. Is that understood? So the life of Lok Sabha and state legislative assembly can be increased. Okay, 1 year at a time. But it cannot be exceeded beyond 6 months. It cannot be exceeded beyond 6 months after the end of national emergency. Did you understand? It cannot be extended beyond 6 months after the end of the national emergency. That means if it is already completed 5 years and the national emergency ends, it cannot be extended beyond 6 months after the end of national emergency. If national emergency is there, it can be increased 1 year at a time indefinitely for any period of time. Is that okay? So the fifth Lok Sabha, that was when national emergency was declared in 1975. So the fifth Lok Sabha was from 1971 to 77. So it was extended once. Okay, it was more than 5 years. The fifth Lok Sabha was from 1971 to 1977. Is an example for this. Okay, next one is, so both Lok Sabha and state legislature can be increased, right? Okay, next one, impact on citizens. Impact on citizens. So what is the impact on citizens? Their fundamental rights can be curtailed when national emergency is declared. So here we have to remember some facts or points. Okay, two things that you have to remember, two articles. One is Article 358 and the other one is Article 359. So Article 358 says that when national emergency is declared by the president, fundamental right under Article 19 automatically is suspended. When national emergency is declared under Article 358, Article 19 is what Article 358 says is that Article 19 is automatically suspended. So the 6 freedoms that we have discussed under Article 19 gets suspended. Just imagine the freedom of speech and expression, movement and all that is suspended. See, it doesn't mean that it is not available. It is available to you. The right is there for you. But if it is violated, then you cannot go to the courts. That is what it means. It doesn't mean that when national emergency is there, you sit at home, don't talk, okay, don't go anywhere. No, it's not like that. You can talk, you can go around. But when it is violated, you cannot go to the court. That means Article 19 is present, but is not justiciable. Meaning it is suspended temporarily for the purpose of national. It is there, but it is only suspended. Okay, meaning you cannot go to the court. It is not justiciable anymore. Did you understand? But an addition you want to add to this is in the 44th Constitutional Amendment Act, 44th Constitutional Amendment Act, this suspension was restricted to only external emergency. External emergency. So that means when emergency is declared on external grounds, only then Article 19 is suspended. Is that okay? And second thing that was done in 44th Constitutional Amendment Act was that only those fundamental rights which are related to national emergency, only the 6 freedoms which are there, which are necessary for the national emergency, only they are suspended, not all of them. Like for example, freedom of vocation. I can practice any vocation I want, correct? No, that is one of the freedoms under Article 19. How is it going to affect the national emergency? So that doesn't get suspended. Only those fundamental rights which are necessary for enforcing national emergency, only that gets suspended and not all. Is that understood, guys? So these are the two changes that were introduced in the 44th Constitutional Amendment Act. So what we can include from this, Article 358 automatically suspends Article 19 when emergency is declared on external grounds. Is that okay, guys? So that is with respect to Article 358, where automatically, please remember that word, automatically it gets suspended. Whereas Article 359 empowers the President to suspend any fundamental right, through a proclamation, meaning he can separately suspend any of the fundamental rights from Article 14 to Article 32. Any of these fundamental rights can be suspended. But 44th Constitutional Amendment Act made some changes to it, and it has added that Article 20 and 21 shall not be suspended even during the emergency. They shall be available. Again, when I say suspended, the meaning is the same. It is available, but it is not justiciable. Meaning Article 32 with respect to these fundamental rights are not available. Article 32 makes it justiciable, right? Writ jurisdiction. So these fundamental rights are available, but Article 32 for those fundamental rights are not available. Did you understand? Okay, let's say the President through a separate proclamation says fundamental right under Article 25 is not available. It will not be available. Meaning you cannot go to the courts to make it justice. Is that okay? Fine. So these are the impact of the national emergency. So before we go into the next aspect of this, you have to remember when can it be revoked. So I told you when it can be proclaimed. I should have mentioned it before, but anyways. So it is declared by whom? President. On what grounds? I told you. When can it be revoked? Revoked means to remove it. So again, who revokes it? It is the President. So revoking also is by the President of India, revokes the national emergency. Here, when he is revoking, there is no need for provisions relating to who will advise, etc. is not mentioned. Oh, sorry, I forgot to add an important point. Once it is declared, it has to be approved by the Parliament. I mean, that's the biggest thing. Okay. So once it is declared, once the national emergency is declared, it has to be approved by the Parliament. And let's try to understand what is the procedure. What is the procedure? It has to be approved by the Parliament by special majority. By special majority. What kind of majority? 2/3. More than 2/3 present and voting plus absolute majority. So it has to be approved by the Parliament. Once it is approved by the Parliament, it will remain in force for 6 months. It has to be approved every 6 months by the Parliament. Otherwise, automatically it will come to an end. You understood? This was added in the 44th Constitutional Amendment Act. So before this 44th Constitutional Amendment, how it was? So once the President declares emergency, it will remain in force forever. And it has to be approved by the Parliament through simple majority. See, that was very easy to declare emergency before. So Parliament, both the Parliament sitting separately has to approve it by simple majority. And once approved, it will remain in force indefinitely until the President revokes it. You understood? But because it is very risky, correct? No, it was misused. So therefore, 44th Constitutional Amendment Act made changes. What was the change? It has to be approved by the Parliament by both the houses sitting separately through special majority, plus it will remain in force only for 6 months. Every 6 months it has to be approved. Every 6 months, provided it is approved, it can remain in force indefinitely. There is no time period, it can remain for indefinite period. But every 6 months it has to be approved by the parliament. Is that okay? Now, coming to when it can be revoked anytime. Who will revoke it? Again, it is the president. Okay, here no cabinet, etc. is mentioned. So, president will revoke it, okay, anytime. Again, on the aid and advice of the Prime Minister and Council of Ministers. That's not mentioned, but it is understood. But then we have, it can be revoked when the Lok Sabha. So over here, please remember this point. When the Lok Sabha, okay, wants the emergency to be revoked, a special session can be requested. Please remember this. Only Lok Sabha has this power. Okay, when the Lok Sabha wants the emergency to be revoked, a special session can be requested. When the House is not in session, they will request the President to call for a session. When the House is already in session, it will request the Speaker to have a special session, whereby they will disapprove or they will, pass a resolution for revoking the emergency. And such resolution is passed by simple majority, has to be passed by simple majority. I'll repeat again. If Lok Sabha wants to withdraw emergency, it can do it. Only Lok Sabha, not Rajya Sabha. Only Lok Sabha has the power to withdraw the emergency. So a resolution will be introduced. A resolution will be introduced in the Lok Sabha for the withdrawal of emergency, and it has to be passed by, please remember this, simple majority. When this resolution is passed in the Lok Sabha by simple majority, the president will have to withdraw the emergency. So this power has been given only to Lok Sabha. This was added again in the 44th Constitutional Amendment Act. They don't have to sit and wait for the president to revoke it. They themselves can pass a resolution through simple majority in order to advise, ask the president to withdraw the emergency. This is there only with Lok Sabha and not with Rajya Sabha. Is that understood, all of you?
Yes, sir.
So one more point you should add, I again forgot. So it has to be approved within 1 month. Once the national emergency is declared, it has to be approved within 1 month. Earlier it was 2 months. Now it has been reduced to 1 month. So national emergency has to be approved within 1 month by special majority in the parliament. Then it will remain in force for 6 months. So if I have to conclude, president declares it, external and internal grounds, okay, on the written advice from the recommendation from the cabinet. Once it is declared, within 1 month has to be approved by the parliament. Special majority will remain in force for 6 months. Okay. Beyond that also it can be extended. Every time it has to be done by the parliament. It can be withdrawn by the president or through a resolution passed by the Lok Sabha by simple majority.